All right, and we are back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast. And for the second part of the show, we're going to now talk about a couple of moves that the Jaguars made yesterday regarding some of their pass catchers. So they made some cuts, along with some more cuts, along with cutting Evan Engram and trading Christian Kirk. Now, they were originally going to just cut Christian Kirk, but then the Texans swooped in and said, hey, we'll trade for him. We need a receiver. And they ended up just trading him to the Texans. And I believe it was for a seventh round pick. Now, Christian Kirk is in the final year of his 4-year contract. And it did get off to a good start. His first season back in 2022, that was when the Jags made the playoffs. They got to the divisional round against the Chiefs. He had 1,100 yards receiving, 84 receptions. He had 8 touchdowns. And he played in all 17 games, but then only played in 12 games in 2023. He only had 3 touchdowns, and he had 787 receiving yards. And then last year, he had 27 receptions for 379 yards and 1 touchdown. And he had a collarbone injury. And the Jaguars felt like they wanted to cut bait with him, and that's what they did. And he goes to a team within the division, a team that needs wide receiver help, so that makes sense. Texans didn't want him to hit the open market. And it's kind of like what they did with the Bengals last year. They traded for Joe Mixon because the Bengals were going to cut Joe Mixon, and then the Texans said, we'll take him. And that ended up working out because Mixon had a good year. And Christian Kirk, he just slides in next to Nico Collins and is that number 2 next year because it doesn't seem like they're going to bring back Stephon Diggs. And Tank Dell is probably going to be out for the whole year, recovering from, his knee injury. So that one I was not surprised by. I was a little surprised by Evan Engram being cut. Now, they have another tight end, Brenton Strange, who stepped up when Engram was hurt. But I felt like Engram was a guy you could still keep around. But he didn't really. He was out with injury last year. He only played in 9 games. 365 yards, 1 touchdown. Previous year, 2023, he was very good. 963 receiving yards, 4 touchdowns, and then he had 4 touchdowns in 2022 as well. But, yeah, I was definitely a little surprised by that. I thought maybe they would have kept him around. But I guess not. They want to just do a complete reset. I mean, obviously, they're not going to do anything with Brian Thomas Jr. He's the guy in Jacksonville. That's Trevor Lawrence's number 1 option. But you could also say after the Kirk trade, Evan Engram would have had the highest salary cap figure on the roster, almost $20 million in 2025. He was set to earn $14.75 million, which would have been the final year of his 3-year contract, which was $25.5 million guaranteed. But, yeah, they cut ties with him. And he wasn't the only guy. Those weren't the only 2 players that ended up getting let go. They let go of Devin Duvernay. They also let go of Josh. I didn't even realize they had Josh Reynolds. They had Josh Reynolds and also Ronald Darby, the corner. So, by these moves, they have saved $25.5 million in cap space. So, look, they are going about it this way. It's a new regime, and they're going to have to address a lot of key positions over the next 2 months between free agency and the draft. And looking at, I'm assuming the cap on over the cap, their cap space has been updated. But depending on how much cap space they have, so right now they have around $49 million in cap space. And I don't know if it's updated yet, but they definitely are going to maybe they draft best player available in the upcoming NFL draft. Um, they could go receiver, they could go offensive line. Maybe they address the defensive side of the ball. Defense does need a lot of work. Defense was not good last year. But it's going to be interesting to see what they do. But yeah, this is a work in progress. And I think the main thing for the Jaguars next year is they keep Trevor Lawrence healthy. And you got to hope that Trevor Lawrence has a big year. Now, I don't think losing Christian Kirk and Evan Engram is going to be detrimental to Trevor Lawrence. They're going to replace these guys. I think these guys are easily replaceable. The Evan Engram move does still surprise me a bit, but they'll figure it out. You got a stud in Brian Thomas Jr. I like what I saw out of Tank Bigsby last year. We'll see if Travis Etienne bounces back or maybe they end up trading him or something. I don't know. Because Travis Etienne had a big year in 2023. He was one of the best running backs in football, and then he was just non-existent last year. I don't know what happened there. So, we'll see what happens, but there's a lot of work to do with this roster. But in terms of the trade that they made with the Texans, like I said, the Texans address a need. They take a flyer on Christian Kirk. He's got 1 year left on his contract. And he's not coming in to be the number one receiver. They have that in Nico Collins. Now, you do worry, last couple of years, he's been banged up. Can he stay on the field? And if he can, this could definitely be a low-risk, high-reward move by the Texans. And you didn't give up that much to get him. You gave up a 7th-round pick. So, I think it's an okay move for the Texans. But we'll have to wait and see what happens there. But it is interesting that the Jaguars were like, "Yeah, we'll give him to you." But I guess maybe they could have been one of the only teams that reached out, and the Jaguars are like, "Hey, we'll take a draft pick rather than just cut him and give him up for nothing." So, and I mean, I don't think Christian Kirk is going to come back and haunt the Jaguars. It's not. The Jaguars, like I've been saying, they have a lot of work to do with this team. So, but a lot of moves, a lot of cuts have been made over the last several days. Next week, the new league year begins. So, a lot of stuff is going to go down. And maybe the Jaguars make more moves. I think Mitch Morse, their center, retired. So that's a position that they are going to have to address. Yeah, so he did retire after 10 seasons. Offensive line is definitely an area they need to address. You got to protect your quarterback. And right now, I can see if I pull up the Jaguars' current depth chart. With now that Evan Engram and Christian Kirk are no longer there. So right now, you got Brian Thomas Jr., but then after that, I forgot they had Gabe Davis. Are they really going to keep Gabe Davis? I feel like he's somebody else that they should maybe move off of too. Because last year, I mean, he was not great. 20 receptions, 239 yards, 2 touchdowns. How many games did he play in? He didn't play in every game either. He got hurt at 1.2. Trying to pull up his season. So, played in only 10 games. And it's amazing because you would have thought after that play, I mean, everybody thought this, after the playoff game against the Chiefs, that he was going to be the next big thing. And it just never happened. But yeah, you got Gabe Davis, you got Parker Washington. Those are your top 3 receivers right now. So, receiver is definitely going to be a position that they address this offseason. Tight end, we'll see. Brenton Strange last year, he had 2 touchdowns. He had 411 receptions. And the Jaguars, they're picking right now They are picking at 5. So they could draft Tetero and McMillan. But then you got the Patriots who are ahead of them, and the Patriots are definitely drafting a receiver. So they could be drafting either Travis Hunter or McMillan. Or maybe the Jaguars adjust another position. Or they could trade down. We'll see. But let me know what you guys think, though, about the moves that the Jaguars made to clear up cap space. What do you think they're going to do this offseason? Who do you think they could potentially bring in? There's definitely a lot of areas they could address. This team has a lot of holes. So we'll see what happens. But before we go to break, just want to remind you guys once again, tip or donate and get your comments recognized. Make sure to hit that super chat button in the chat if you want to see me acknowledge any thought or comment you may have throughout the live broadcast. That makes the show more lively, more entertaining between myself, the host, and you guys, the viewers. We appreciate you guys' viewership each and every day, so any contribution you can make to the show means the world to us as we put out content for you guys each and every day. And also the other way to help out the show is by going to the link at the bottom of the show segment on the ticker, GSMCPodcast.net. That is GSMCPodcast.net. So when we come back from our next break, we will discuss a couple of AFC North teams, the Cincinnati Bengals and the Cleveland Browns. We'll talk about Trey Hendrickson getting permission from the Bengals to seek out a trade, and also the Browns once again restructuring Deshaun Watson's contract. So with that being said, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Sports Podcast.